Everybody, thank you so much for joining me again for another NMR Connect series event. We're so happy to have you here, whether in person, live, virtually, or actually in the on-demand viewing of this content. Today is an incredible day for me because I just came back from an event in the Bahamas a couple of weeks ago, and the wonderful person you see either above or below me is Liz Lathan, who is a very dear friend of mine, but she's also, more importantly, the co-founder and CMO of Hot Companies. Now, I'm a big fan of Hot Companies. They have an incredible take on how to connect with humans. Liz's responsibilities from day to day is overseeing the marketing for all the hot brands, but she has an incredible background in corporate marketing. She's led various different event marketing and strategy teams for several Fortune 500 companies. Not only that, but Liz was nominated for the Event Marketing B2B Dream Team. She's a winner of the Smart Women in Events Entrepreneur Award, and she was also the president of SEMA, which is, as you know, the Corporate Event Marketing Association. So, Liz, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Kyle. I am so excited to be here and talk with you.
So, Liz, we obviously were hanging out in the Bahamas, but we have a history of really fun times hanging out together. I think the first HD Hot Tokyo event I attended was in Chicago. That's maybe, I think, the first time I met you. Then I wound up going to Italy and hanging out with you and a lot of our friends in Tuscany. And then just recently in the Bahamas, where you dropped in the magazine that you published some reading that I was blown away by, but then also obviously integrated into the event was ROE, which is return on emotion.
Yeah.
Tell me first about what it is, why you and your team created this metric, and how does it work?
So when we created Hot originally, it was because we, in the corporate event world, were starting to feel like events had gotten really formulaic. Keynote, breakout, expo, concert. Woohoo, we're done. And going to them as a participant, not just a producer, was getting overly repetitive. And we really thought that there was a different way that we needed to be gathering, especially when you become a little bit more senior in the industry and you're not really there for the learning so much anymore. You're there for the connections and for the problem solving that happens in the coffee break. And the coffee breaks were getting shorter and shorter, and we're getting xylophone shamed into the rooms to get back and listen to people talk at us. So we really tried to create these new and different events that would supplement the learning that we wanted to get throughout the year. And so what you experienced in Chicago was our opportunity to bring people together to find out what challenges are we trying to solve, what challenges have we solved and can help other people, and then do something surprising, because we all as event professionals know that a shared experience is truly what drives connection. And a 5-minute coffee break is not a shared experience. So I think the one you were at, did we try to break a world record for most sticky notes on a face in 60 seconds?
We did. That's true.
Yeah. So
yeah. And you know what's funny is I've made friends at that event in Chicago, and it wasn't a large group of people. I think there was maybe 60 or 70 people at it, right? And I made friends at that event that I still talk to almost either not weekly or monthly. And that type of connection, I think, is what makes your format of doing this type of event so powerful. And I know it's funny because we had a conversation yesterday and we went over how we're going to set this up. And then, of course, right as we start, my microphone stops working. So my brain goes blank and we start. And the consummate professional you are, you pull this right back in to our agreed timeline and discussion. But keep telling me more. Tell our audience more about Hot and what that format has yielded for you guys.
Yeah, well, from those, it was really about conversation. There was no purpose to it. It was, we wanted to create a community and grow a community of like-minded professionals that are just trying to push the envelope a little bit and to share best practices and solve problems together. So, but just what you said about that Chicago experience, people started telling us at the end of these events, I feel like I have a new family. And so that's when we created what we called Secret Family Reunion, where it was the ultimate surprise of bringing 80 experiential marketers to JFK with a passport and a suitcase. And we didn't tell them much else. And we revealed that we had chartered a plane to Tuscany and whisked everyone away for a 6-day set of these spontaneous think tanks, but punctuated by micro event moments, like a small group of 6 people going truffle hunting, or a group of people creating pasta. So, when you're having these experiences, a macro event or micro event, being able to have those small group moments is where you create connection. And we knew it was real. We knew it was true. You and I had talked about this, that again, we didn't really go into it with we got to make money, we got to do all the things. But what we heard was that over $10 million in business had been done with the participants across with each other since that event. And we've heard some people tell us, I alone did more business than that. So the environment was right. The conversations were right. How can we kind of formalize what happened there and prove that that stuff works? Because it was a crazy, stupid idea. Who charters a plane and sends people to a secret place? So,
Yeah.
so after 2020 happened, and we were still like, everyone thought 2021 is going to be awesome, pandemic's over, but we knew there was going to be a few more months of it. So we decided, let's figure out which emotion it was that really drove the business conversations. And we've all heard that, you have to have emotional marketing in order to drive brand loyalty. Or there's the Harvard study that says 95% of decisions are made with emotion, not logic. No one buys a Ferrari because it's a good deal, right? It's an emotional decision. So which emotion did we need to evoke? So we did, over the course of 2021, this year-long research study. We worked with a research firm who, the leader is a professor at Johns Hopkins University, so fully legit research to figure out which emotion. And it turned out there are 5. And so that's what this is all about. These 5 emotions that you must evoke in your marketing programs create return on emotion, which drives return on investment.
All right. So before you dive into those 5 emotions, let me just kind of position a question for you here. When I'm working on growing NMR's business, right? I've always had a very strong belief in the relationships that we start to formulate, and this was very much true what happened for me in Chicago, in Italy, and again in Bahamas, and but it's what's funny about it is, when a comedian tells a joke and you're like, that is so brilliant, but it was so logical, right? It was so common sense, and you're like, how did I not think of that, right? Or it aligns to something that's happened in your life and you assimilate with it right away. What I found was, my greatest asset when building new relationships has always been getting beyond the corporate professional RFP request, like, just be another number in the tally, and built friendships. And once I built friendships and trust, then the business came, and a lot of what I experienced at these events and at this format of an event created in that environment where it wasn't about, our wares. It wasn't about, what we did day to day. It was about who we were as humans. And that allowed us to connect, and that once that connection happened, it allowed us to figure out, oh, I want to do business with Kyle, or I want to do business with Liz because I connected with them, and they see things the way I do, and I can trust them, so I guess, what I saw happen in these events leads to this next question is, why is it that it's so hard to get stakeholders, right, to buy into this format of an event? What's the barriers that a lot of people come up against?
I don't even necessarily think it's the format of the events we do that people need to buy into. It's just adding in these certain elements. It's adding in white space, and it's adding in some serendipitous moments. And I think from a corporate side, we so often have our content leads and our executives that say, but you have to push all of this out. We have so much content. We're just going to need to go a little faster and get everything out there. And people don't necessarily come to your event for all the content, especially now over the last 2 years. You can get the content on demand, you can get it on YouTube, you can go to the webinars. You're there for the people. And so we need to get our stakeholders to understand that it's the emotion of the people now. So when we go through the emotions with them, now we can quantify it and truly prove that ROE is driving ROI. So we're going to be able to put that space in there and find other ways to deliver some of that educational content.
Yeah. I was actually in a meeting earlier today. A runner show came out, right? And it was an 80-minute program. And, they ran through all these items. And I looked at it and I'm like, man, where is the part that people talk about?
Right.
Right. And because obviously there's a lot of executives who have a lot of really important things they need to say, right? Or do they? Right. Like, so is the event about hearing what the executives have to say, or is it about the attendee experience falling in love with the brand?
Right.
Right. And so that's the part that I struggle with all the time, because it's really tough, because the executives are the ones, they're the stakeholders, they're the ones saying yes, spend the money on this event, right? And they have their, obviously, and I get it. Today is that for me, right?
Yeah.
I'm an executive in a company and I'm doing an event and I want people to hear that I'm smart, right? And that's all ego, you know. So
That's the other
how do
ROE,
we?
return on ego.
Right, there you go. So how do you help companies? Now, this may be a really good way for you to kind of break down ROE for us, and then I think what would be awesome is for us to then look at Flashpoint, the event in the Bahamas, after that. But tell us how ROE and those 5 emotions can help internal teams get the stakeholders, the executives, to understand it and then say, okay, great, this is a better event for us.
Yeah, well, I think logistically, when you're creating a conference and you think through that keynote, breakout, expo, concert kind of formula that we're doing, the problem, and I know this because I've led event teams at corporations, is that we divide those into project teams. I have a keynote team who's working on the main stage, dealing with all the vendors, dealing with all the content. I have my expo team who's working with my general contractor, creating that experience. I have my breakout team who's responsible for all the AV in the rooms and getting the content and speaker management. And then I have my evening event concert team, and they're going to go work on all of that stuff. And what we're not connecting is thinking through the buyer's journey of how we should be helping people experience the thought leadership piece on stage that goes to the hands-on piece in the breakout room of success stories, that goes to the hands-on demos and the experiences in the expo floor, that creates a sense of shared experience to the concert. And what else can we add in there? So let's walk through what the emotions are and figure out how we could plan that. We like to say that creating emotions at your events brings home the bacon. So we created an acronym that's HAM with 3 A's. So HAAAM, these are the 5 emotions you need to know. And it's not in any particular order. I just like to remember it that way. So the first one is hopeful, adventurous, active, accepted, and motivated. So it's not hard. You mentioned it earlier. It's not rocket science. You're like, oh, okay. Our initial thesis, like our hypothesis going into this, was that we were creating happiness, that all the experiences we created released oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, which is the formula for happiness. And it turns out happiness wasn't actually one of the official emotions that came out in our research. It was these 5. But in the end, they are together releasing dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. So we are creating happiness. Now, that doesn't mean that you might market in a different way, right? You might market out of fear or, some reason for you to buy something. But when it comes to an experience, you want these 5 emotions to be present to create an environment for connection. So thinking through motivation and hopefulness, right? So those are the end caps. I'll call them the bread in our ham sandwich. We're all really good at doing that. Every event that we do, that's what marketers do. We motivate and we provide hope because we want to persuade that our way is the way people need to do it. Easy peasy, we got that covered. That's where your keynote comes in, right? That's where your breakout sessions come in.
Right.
Done. It's the 3 in the middle. It's the meat of the ham sandwich that we forget about. Adventure's the scariest one. How do you add adventure into a virtual event? You've experienced it. How would you do it?
Yeah. So adventure for me is always going to be, what are the things that we're going to do that get me out of my comfort zone, right? Things I've never done before, where I can create a life experience that I'm going to remember forever, and the people that were with me while I did it.
Right. Exactly. So we've done things like virtual adventures. We'll use the screen as a portal, not a boundary. Take people to the top of a mountain in Patagonia to try whiskey, right? You're kissing the Blarney Stone in Ireland all through the screen. It's these crazy adventures, but it doesn't have to be live adventures. It could be a video that you create that tells the customer journey transformation story of how they went from without your product to having your product. And that transformation lets you see their adventure and feel like it's a part of it. So it doesn't have to be this like crazy rock climbing wall. Everyone gets a whatever.
Well, because then you segment the audience too, right? Like if you do something that other people can't maybe even do, right? Then you've broken your audience apart.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Yeah.
So active is the next one. And again, this doesn't mean that you have to go rock climbing. It doesn't mean that you have to be up and about and have yoga sessions in the middle of your event or anything. It means engagement. It means engagement and involvement. And am I freezing on you? I see some clips there. We're
No,
good. Okay.
you're good.
So engagement and involvement, having them be part of the experience, having them create content, having them crowdsource, having them answer poll questions, having them active in the chat, like super active chat, and not just the like, where are you dialing in from today, but actually asking questions that you're going to use the answers for future. Like if you've got a multiple hour long event and you've got speakers that are going to be part of a later event or later conversation, can you do some crowdsourcing up front in the chat and ask people questions so that their feedback can be fed to the speakers later? And now they've had an active role in how the conversation is going to go. And then acceptance.
So,
oh, go ahead.
right. Okay. No, I was going to say, because you actually naturally transitioned into one of the points I wanted you to make, because it's important. This applies to any format event, right? Whether it's virtual, hybrid, in person, this metric will work in any one of those areas.
Direct mail, video, it doesn't even have to be an event. This is your marketing program. Like imagine that you're just sending people a direct mail box and you want them to all experience this unopening experience, or unboxing experience together. Then having all of these emotions can be a part of it. You feel a part of something when you get a branded something, right? You're a part of the tribe.
Yeah.
So, and then acceptance. So this is the one that it's a little bit more difficult in virtual, but what's going to make me not hit that little X and close my screen on you? Is there something that makes me feel like, I'm there and that you'd miss me if I were gone, and that the people I'm with are the right people for the conversation I want to have? And so initially setting it up with the welcome. So I mentioned where are you dialing in from? But it's true. That is truly a way to make people feel welcome. And you see 5 people that are in Vancouver and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm in Vancouver too. Like you can see that stuff start to happen, and just having that opening, having that moment where you're reassuring them that they belong there with you. And then if you can, call them out, say hi. If you can see people, I see Dana's here. Hi, Dana. I'm so excited that you've joined us today. Just those moments of making sure they feel like they're here with you. And then if you can, you have your virtual event. The reason we do those virtual happy hours is that shared sense of belonging, right? We've sent them a cocktail kit. We're going to have our mixologist, but you have to make sure this is engaging in some way. Otherwise, you're just watching a video of someone make a drink.
Great. So I'm going to pause us there for a second and do a little housekeeping to give you a break. All right. And just because we have quite a few people here hanging out, watching us live. And I just want to let everybody know that right now you're on the Stream It platform. Okay. This is a platform built by NMR, and it is built by event people for event people. And the whole point of this experience for us today from a technology standpoint is for you to feel comfortable in this environment. So just so you know, if you want to ask any questions, you'll see at the top right corner of the screen, there are some options. There's chat, so you can chat. You see Dana's talking in there right now. And there's Joy, who we were in the Bahamas with. Hi, Joy. Good to see you.
Joy.
Thanks for dropping that little note. But if you click on the icon next to chat, all right, you'll see that there is a Q&A. So we're using Slido integrated into this video conference room on our platform. And you can go and type your question in there, and our moderators will push it through to me, and I'll see it. And I'll be able to ask your question at the end of our conversation. So coming back around, Liz, what I wanted to really kind of loop around was one of the statements you made in the amazing brochure that you printed out, by the way, or magazine. Really, it was a magazine for the Bahamas event. It said that ROE leads, and I'm paraphrasing, leads to ROI.
Yep.
Now, explain that a little bit further for everybody.
Okay, so ROI is the metric that you really, really care about, right? We're not really talking about brand loyalty with the events that we're creating here in the corporate world. We're driving pipeline and revenue. So pipeline and revenue is not going to come immediately. A lot of us have a 1 to 2 year long sales cycle, and we're not going to see the immediate results. But like you were talking about, these connections that we're making will result in something, because you and I, we both believe business is personal. And so when you can create the environment for a connection to occur, business will come from that. So ROE, using this blueprint of hopeful, adventurous, active, accepted, and motivated to craft your program, will create the environment for personal connections that will drive that future business. So that's why we say ROE drives ROI. And we have a website, roedrivesroi.com. So you can get all this information. You can share this with your team. You can start using this as a blueprint.
Great. And we'll put that in chat. And when we post everything, we'll have all those links and everything set aside for you to go and follow up on that. As I listen to you more and more, it, it's such a funny, in my head, there's this just visual of ROE leading to ROI. And it really is like the old adage of, in our career, if we do what we love, the money will follow.
Right.
Right. And I think that just lines up so well from a personal side to a business execution side of really, like you said, feeding the funnel and growing your company and growing your business or growing your team, and even in that matter, it's a very, listening to a comedian speak and saying the things that you experience in life, you get it right away. And that was what happened for me in the Bahamas. Was the minute I started reading it, the minute you started sharing about it, I got it right away. I was like, this is what we always try to kind of hit and do, but how do we measure it? And we've never even thought about measuring that before. I'll give you one other story, Liz, that happened to us in the pandemic, right? Engagement was the big thing. Everybody wanted engagement. How do we keep people, out of that silo effect, right? Like, so that they don't feel that they're attending an event alone. How do we get them to face, feel that environment? And it's really a tough thing to do. Technology helps, our platform does that pretty well, and other platforms do as well. But what we found, and I think you'll love this, leaderboards became, obviously, leaderboards have been around forever at trade show booths and events. You do something, you get a point. But we still saw that people would come on, they'd attend the section of the event that they knew that they had to be at, and then the minute they could get out, they would, right? and so we started digging in early in the pandemic and said, all right, well, how do we keep people, how do we keep their attention, to your point earlier? And one of the things that worked incredibly well when we talk about emotion was we started to tie an affinity group or a charity to the leaderboard. Right. So if you scored a point by going and asking a question in a breakout session, or by attending a keynote, or, by posting on the internal social feed, right, whatever those point attributions were on that matrix, there was a dollar amount donated in kind.
Wow.
Right. So now you had this heart tug, right? And what I always like to say in business is a sense of indebtedness, right? So anytime I can help somebody and give of myself, sowing and reaping, right? It's not that we do it because we want to reap, but we do it, we pay it forward enough, and we do enough good. We got to hope that somewhere somebody's going to do the same for us, right? And once we put that formula together, all of a sudden engagement skyrocketed.
Mm-hmm.
You had this alignment of emotion with business that made sense to people. It wasn't like there was any really, crossing of lines that was inappropriate. It was straightforward. All right, if I go and do this, if I go and visit this partner at their booth on the virtual event, right, then I'm going to gain points to help somebody else out. And that made sense. That clicked. So I think that lines up perfectly with what you're talking about as far as, those emotional actions that we do. And now being able to take this measurement and apply that in to show our partners where business will be done because of the score. And that's kind of why I told this story, is there is a measurement tool that you use when you're taking all 5 of these together. And tell me what that looks like. We'll have the visuals obviously come up while you speak. I'll edit those in because I have the pamphlet, but walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah. So you got to measure it, because that's, my brain, we come up with ridiculously crazy ideas that are easy to say, yeah, that's not possible, or it's not even worth trying. But now, if we can show that these ridiculously crazy ideas have driven ROI, now we can put some even crazier and crazier and crazier ideas to it, right? So not too crazy, but pretty crazy. We want to think outside the box.
Right.
So we got to measure it. And you've heard of the NPS score, right? Most of our corporations use it.
Yep.
And NPS says, it's a question you add at your post-event survey, asking, would you recommend this event to someone else? Would you recommend my company to a colleague? Would you recommend my product to a colleague? So it is a simple single question. The problem with NPS is that the results are, the person answering the question has to have already been a customer of yours to recommend you. So I had a great experience, I would recommend this. Or I didn't have a great experience, I wouldn't recommend it. ROE, right. The score for ROE, you don't have to already be a customer. So you just have to have had an experience, and you may recommend me to someone else or you to another client, even if they've never done business together, because they feel like that you're going to be trustworthy and like you're creating something that's meant for them. So how do you measure it? It's 5 questions, and it's a sliding scale. So 0 to 10, do you feel after this event hopeless or hopeful? passive or active, hesitant or adventurous, rejected or accepted. What's my last one? Uninspired or motivated. And so the average score that you want to hit across those is an 8.6. Our research showed that 8.6 is the number to show that you've created an environment where people are going to want to do business with each other. And we studied 3 cohorts. That was attendee to attendee, attendee to sponsors, and attendee to event host. And all of them were the same. It all came out the same. So you need to hit an 8.6 mark. So our Flashpoint event that we did in January came out at 9. So we created an environment where people are willing to continue to have conversations and share business with each other. And that was our objective.
Yeah. And that's a perfect segue. Once again, you tee me up. You're like the easiest guest ever on any kind of webcast, webinar, podcast, whatever you want to call it. The trip in, so taking that formula, taking that metric, doing the survey post event, getting the feedback from the attendees. Let's move into recapping a little bit about Flashpoint, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you my first initial experience, right? Like what I thought of before I agreed to go, right? And then what it was like when I was there, and then what I feel post event. And I think that will give everybody kind of a sense. And I'll do it. I'm long-winded, so I'm going to do this in a lot less words than normal. All right. I was hesitant at first to join, right? Why? Well, we're coming out of a pandemic, right? I'm traveling internationally, right? There was a lot of things at first that made, am I really going to get in a position where, I'm going to be able to meet people that I could actually, justify spending the money to go.
Right.
All right. So those are all the things that came through my head. And then, to be honest with you, what really, I sent you a text, and you sent me a text back, and you said, well, hey, look, this is what's going on. And you were very transparent about how many applicants there were and how many people had signed up. And it was looking like it was going to be smaller, obviously, than what was in Italy with 80 of us,
Yep.
And the smaller is really what actually caught my attention, right? That was what in my head was like, well, small group I love, right? Mm-hmm. Because if what I learned most from you guys about relating to people was that macro micro feel was really in a powerful place for everybody to have time to get to know each other. And then the rotation of it, right? In one part of the day, you're meeting with one group of people, and in the other part of the day, you've got an entirely different group of people talking about something entirely different. And that was really unique, right? So that smaller group really got my attention. Then when I arrived, I knew some people already, which was awesome, right? So I felt accepted, right? That was a big thing for me. And, because I didn't, show up and not know anybody. And I mean, obviously that knowing the organizers always helps, but the attendees is where I really want to invest myself in to connect to people. So, but then what you guys set up in the program, look, we've talked already about, crowdsourcing and doing these, these spontaneous think tanks where you have industry titans, really, right, who are able to share with you information at a personal level, right? Not, that's what I love about these conversations that we have at these events was it's not about, us sounding smart, right? It's this willingness to kind of just almost let everything that's inside you come out unguarded, unfiltered.
That vulnerability.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that vulnerability. That's right. And that vulnerability of saying, look, this is what I'm really good at, and this is what I've seen works, and this is what doesn't, and this is how I failed, and this is how I succeeded. When you get people sharing at that level, and only because it's in those smaller groups, I think, because if you have this group of 150, 200 people in a room, your willingness to participate in that is nil. I mean, at least for me it is, and I love attention, right?
Yeah.
But so that was so then you guys had us learning, right? We went, and I got to be honest with you, when I first looked at what we would be doing at Flashpoint, I was like, I don't want to go look at the back of house of an aquarium, right? I was like, I want to go golfing, like, why isn't there golf on this thing, and then, but what happened was we went through this tour, and then, you got to know everybody by the way they reacted to certain things, who loved picking up turtles or looking at seals. And, it was just the empathy that you learned about people, right? So all of that tied together, me hanging out in a casino with people and playing some blackjack, and Tess and I, Tess won a couple $100 playing with me. So I mean, like, there was all those moments, I mean, and it was incredible. So that was my inexperience. I met people, and I was able to see myself in other people and have conversations with them about that, like, on a real intimate level, where you
Mhm.
ordinarily wouldn't do that with a client, right?
Right.
Or at least not after knowing them for that short of a period of time.
Yeah.
Post event, I felt like it was one of the best decisions I made. All right.
Oh.
And I'm not trying to make this some big advertising sales thing for you guys. I want to be honest about what works, right? And I want people to trust what I say. The decision to go was obviously up in the air at first. My experience was incredible. I didn't want to leave, right? And not just because it was in the Bahamas, but because the people were that awesome. And then and I think that that's really rings true about most events. There are awesome people there. You just don't have the mechanisms in place to get to know them, right? And that's what I think is so special about this, and even with ROE, now that we can learn about what works and what doesn't. And I left there knowing exactly how to execute to help grow business, right? How to talk to the people I met, what would work for them, and where we could work together without ever really talking about business, which is one of the strangest things to me. So I'll shut up now and let you kind of comment on what you just heard, and what your experience was with Flashpoint.
That's amazing. That's exactly what we want the outcome to be when you create this environment. And anyone can use this blueprint, if you will, to add this into the events that you're already preparing for 2022. It's not that it's a unique, totally secret formula. Like, we share how to do this. So think about it as the blueprint, and how we looked at Flashpoint and with the ROE blueprint. So day one for us was all about acceptance. So for the folks that came in on the first day, I was literally at the airport with pom poms, like welcoming
How did
people.
I not tell that story? Right, you were there. You came off the plane. You were right there. That was amazing.
So having someone that's not just transportation with a sign that you go to, but like, you're here, you're in the right place, and I'm so excited for you. And then throughout the day, so we got our folks to the hotel, and we had our CEOs have a cabana out by the pool. So waiting until the event starts, go out there, hang with them, just get to know people, have a great time. And then the evening event that night was really focused on the Bohemian culture. We had a Junkanoo, which is kind of like a carnival type of parade, and we had a Junkanoo come through, and we got the history of that, so that you felt like you belonged in the Bahamas and that you were part of that tradition as well. So that was our day one. Our day two, we really focused it around active and adventure. And the active part was, we started with crowdsourcing, which is, what are those challenges you're trying to solve? What are the challenges you've solved and can help other people? All on sticky notes, all on the wall, so we can all see what the challenges are. Now, the reason we love to crowdsource is that sticky note wall are now all of the insights that we're going to use for planning future programs, future content, and how we're going to do events, because we
It's
now know
incredible.
what everyone's challenges are. It is
Yeah.
free and easy to do, and everyone should be crowdsourcing at some point in their event, even if it's just adding it into the registration questions of, what challenge are you trying to solve? What challenge have you solved and can help someone else with? It's so easy. The adventure part, you talked about behind the scenes. And for me, the adventure is, if I think it's interesting, my enthusiasm is going to just overflow for everyone else too. And so, to your
That's
point, Jim,
true.
like, behind this, really, who wants to meet the bomb dog team? Oh my goodness, the bomb dog team. Did you know Atlantis has this canine squad? They do illicit substance searches, they do bomb dog stuff. The coolest thing for us was that this team has been around for 30, 40 years. The only time they interact with guests is when they're taking them down. So, so for them to be able to show these demonstrations, like, they did a whole performance for us, and us watching them, videoing us watching them. Like, there was emotion right there for all of us, and we just all got excited about it. Anyway, day three, our send off day, our final day, was really focused on hope and motivation. The hope that there's a better future together, that we're doing something right, that we're going to leave here with things that we can go implement, and the motivation to go implement it. And so, one of the things that people brought up was, gosh, it'd be nice if I could take stuff back to my office. So we asked everyone what their insights were. They all put them in the group WhatsApp chat. I created a PowerPoint that had everything that people said that they had learned, the takeaways, so that every member of the audience, every participant, had a PDF of this PowerPoint that they could go back and
Right.
present to people in their offices and show exactly what they learned.
So you know, obviously there's a lot of things that you said there that made me remember stuff. And one of the things that I didn't touch on, right? This is for me, like when I soak something in, I think it like in stages. But the things that really stood out now that you spoke about it, I should let you say it first because then I would have had more to comment on. Was your keynote. All right.
Mhm.
So Liz, you gave a keynote and I came up gushing right after that, like because it wasn't long, right? It was I
Mhm.
think 20 minutes maybe,
Mhm.
right? And
Yep.
and it hit every single thing that you're trying to measure in a keynote, right? Everything you just talked about, you had stories in there, you had emotion, it was vulnerable, right? It was intimate, I mean, all those things that needed to, people felt like they knew you in 20 minutes if they hadn't met you yet, right? And that's a talent, and I think that looking at what you were able to do as a CMO of a company and position yourself and say, okay, I'm not going to talk for an hour, right? I'm going to get out the information that I want to share, but I'm also going to give people part of me, and that was such an incredible moment for me because I wasn't expecting it, and it kind of took me by surprise. Um, so that was awesome. But then the other part was the final barbecue for me, right? Like so
Yeah.
so they did this incredible barbecue on the beach, right? And what that
The
wound up
lobster.
being
There
for me
was
was,
so much lobster.
I know, the lobster, there was steak, there was everything. It was incredible. And that and hats off to Doug and his team and everybody out at Atlantis because Doug Caldwell, who's actually my roommate in Italy, and then he wound up landing that job at Atlantis I think in between. They went just overboard. I mean, they were incredible.
It was
But
incredible.
sitting around the bonfire on the beach with people that I had just met and people that I had known for a little while, that's when like the real, what we need to do to help each other because we knew time was running out, right?
Yeah.
We knew this was coming to an end, and everybody just started opening up and saying, what I really need help with is guidance on this. We had people ask, people come up to me and say, Kyle, can you talk to me more about technology and how we can better improve in this space? So I got to give, I got to receive, it was absolutely incredible. I want to bring around. I see there's a question in here too, that came up. Did you put that question in?
No, what is it? I'm very excited.
It says, "Are you able to share your full study results? This might be more for convincing for execs or an
Yep.
infographic with sources cited."
Yep.
So
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely. So our creative team is working on, we're going to have an explainer video and we have an infographic that's in motion. So it should be ready about the second week of March. We're going to have the video and everything ready to go so that you can take it all and go share it. Right now we have just kind of the basics outlined on ROE-ROI.com. And then there's a blog post that goes through everything that I talked through today, and that's linked on that site. And so give us a couple of weeks and we're going to have all the assets ready to go. Because we did this research study and now it's time for us to start putting things into action and testing it. And we want everyone else to put them into action and test it and let us know, because this is evolving. We haven't written the book because now we're starting it, right? We did the research and now
Right.
it's time to try these things.
And so that was kind of my next thing was I started thinking about how does this apply to somebody like myself who's in event technology and audiovisual, right? And the funny thing about it is, and I think that planners can do this and planning teams can do this, is you can, before you've even had time to measure for success, right, with ROE, you can use it as the blueprint to make sure you're hitting all those marks ahead of time, right? So
I
for a
think the blueprint's
technology,
more important than the measurement, to be honest, because we
right,
all know how hard
right.
it is to get people to turn in a gosh darn survey. So it's really, if you're creating a program along that blueprint and measuring it yourself as you go along, you know about where you're going to land, right?
Right. And you're going to see the results, right? The KPIs, all the other corporate metrics and indicators of a funnel getting fed and people performing within their business
Yep.
segments. That's all going to happen regardless, right? I mean, if you have a successful event, depending on your sales cycle, like you mentioned earlier, you're going to see it work, and you're going to know just by talking to people, right? Your sales teams are going to come out of this type of an event and go, "Well, that was special because I got access to people that I normally are very standoffish, and I take them out to dinner and they're quiet." This was a totally different experience because it breaks down those barriers when you're hitting on those 5 points that Liz shared, those 5 emotions, right? What you're essentially doing is humanizing a corporate event, right? You're taking what is usually very structured, okay, very repeatable, very predictable, all right, and you're creating something that then breaks down past that corporate barrier and gets a salesperson into the position that they try so hard to get to, that's really hard to accomplish, but the event is doing that for them, right? And
Well, that's how you
all
get
your
your
sales.
we always have trouble getting our salespeople to drive people to events because they're like, my job is to sell, not to bring people to your events. So keep with your
Right.
events, but that's not my job, right? But
That's
now,
such a great point.
now with ROE, the salespeople care that your program has that. So if you can go up to them and go, look, we've created this program and we're looking at an ROE of 9 or greater at this. The salespeople don't want all the leads that came from a webinar where someone was just a talking head and didn't have all the things, because now the salesperson's like, hey, I saw that you joined. How did it go? But instead, when the salesperson calls, you were on the shark adventure. What did you think? And they have something to talk about in exchange.
Right.
We did a program that was truly a live, world's first live underwater shark dive. And we had figured out how to get the technology connected so you could talk to the diver while they were there with the sharks. And this was for a client that had about 300 people join, including a top prospect that had never gone to any of their events that they had invited him to. We set it for like a Thursday or Friday night so that they could bring the family. He's on this and watching it. At the end, we kind of hung out, saying hi to people as they were leaving. And he had his 3 kids on his lap and he goes, I look forward to whoever calls me on Monday because you just made me the world's greatest dad.
That's awesome. Right.
I mean, It's those moments. We need to create stories to tell. That is what our events, our programs are all about, is creating a story that someone's going to share.
Right. Liz, one of my dad's greatest attributes in life was he was an amazing storyteller, right? Mm-hmm. He would walk in a room and he was the world's worst joke teller, but he told great stories. And the reason why he was terrible at jokes is because he could never get to the punchline without laughing. But you were laughing with him, right? He just could. He thought everything was so funny. But what was amazing about his ability to tell stories was he pulled people in, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm blessed to have that ability that he handed down to me by watching him for so many years. And you touched on it right there, right? I mean, when we're able to tell a story in any format, any medium, right, and connect with people, just like you just shared with that that VIP Target and the shark event that you did. But it doesn't even need to be as complicated as that, right? And I mean, I don't mean to say that was complicated, but this happens in so many different levels.
Right.
And when you tell a story to someone, whether it's sitting at the bar, sitting in a pre-function area, waiting for a session to begin, and you're willing to share, that's the beginning of that human connection. Our friend Brian Kramer always likes to talk about human to human, and that's been stuck in my head ever since I met him in Italy, and I think that affected a lot of us because I never heard of that before. I mean, we all heard about human connections, but really focusing on making a conscious effort to really be humans when we connect with people.
And if you don't know his story, he did a very famous TED Talk that said, there is no more B2B or B2C. There is only H to H. And we fully believe that.
Yeah. And so, when we start to conclude today, as we very swiftly move through 46 minutes, like I think every one of our conversations do. I'm just reminded because we're talking about humans, and a dear friend of ours, remember, had knee surgery, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the kind of life connection that I mean about in business, right? Liz called me up and said, hey, I'm coming into the New York area. We have an event going on, but I want to go visit our friend. Will you, pick me up and come up with me? And I'm like, I'm in. Like 100%. And
I think I said, I'm going to grab a cab. And you said, no friend of mine is in a cab in New York. I'll pick you up.
Yeah, that's true. But either way, whatever, you're right about that. That was the way it went down. And I picked you up and we had a very similar thing to what we're having right now. We talked from the minute you got in the car, didn't stop until we got to the hospital. And here was the part that it wasn't that you and I were willing to go visit this person in the hospital and try to show them how much we cared about them. It was when we got there, she had presents for us.
Right.
That was the part that hit me so hard.
Right.
That type of connection, right, with somebody who's a buyer in my market, right? Do you know I've never even sold that person? We wound up doing business together. I've never even tried to sell them, right? It was always, how do we work together, right? What makes sense? And when it makes sense, it makes sense. And when it doesn't, it doesn't. The key is that we all know that there's enough work for everybody in this industry, and we align when it makes sense for everybody, and we don't when you don't. And being comfortable in that establishes that trust. It was such a great life experience for me. So, we talk about these trips, but it's really way more than that. It grows. And then we went and had an Italian dinner in Manhattan, and went and hung out at your event. Um, so yeah, I think that, if you're thinking about from a planning perspective, from if you're in my industry and you're a technology provider, right, and you're looking at how you formulate, what you develop in products, and how you, create tools to make events more engaging, to make them more exciting, to make them more lifelike, whatever it might be, right? If you follow these five emotions, you now have that blueprint on how to be successful. And then great side of it is you can prove it afterwards,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and we talk about it can be video too, right? It doesn't even have to be live events. It can be pre-recorded. And my joke is Game of Thrones. I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan, and
Yeah.
that was not live. That was
No.
pre-recorded.
Right.
But and I watched it alone, or me and my husband on a Sunday night or whatever. So how did that get all the emotions other than it just being a show? The active part, all my friends that watched it, we were texting each other, and what's going to happen? Did you see what happened to Jon Snow? Like, so there's just
Right.
this additional surround that you can create around it beyond the merchandise. And South by did an activation and had the throne. You could go sit on, like, so just thinking about through those moments. You don't have to do that with your entire event, but is there a moment that can happen that can carry through and create more activity? And just putting that spin on it, whatever makes you excited will make other people excited, or enough people to make a difference. So I like to think through those five emotions is, am I going to feel all of these things? If I'm planning
Right.
an event that's going to suck, that's going to come through. It's like they say, you can taste the food when it was made with love. Same thing with our events. You can feel
Yeah.
when that event was made with love.
Yeah. I mean, I've literally sat in pre-production meetings watching the edit of the experience happen, whether it's budget driven or opinion driven, right? And watched. I say that you suck the soul out of an event, like, it's literally, you can see it happen, right? And if you go back to these fundamentals and everybody buys in, that's less likely to happen, because the
Yeah.
value, right, of the spend, the value of the time, right, the time investment, the monetary investment is relocated to the things that they know will make people remember that event.
That's right.
Will make people remember that experience. And once we start refocusing that way, and we get out of, oh man, we got to get these. Your sales team is going to make the points for you. They have plenty of time to do that, right? Focus on connecting with the humans that your buyers are, and you have a whole different experience.
I always joke with my husband, he's in e-commerce, and I used to say, if all the power in all the world went out, you'd have nothing to show for your work. But I'm creating memories. And so I have to keep that in mind, that even if it's a virtual event, the memories you're created, we're all talking about a shark dive that we did virtually. I didn't, I wasn't the one doing it, but I was still part of it and feeling that. When we did our first skydive live on Zoom, where I wasn't the one jumping out of a plane, but I had that adrenaline rush as he tumbled forward with the camera on.
Right.
Like, you felt all of it, and you can create those moments for people, and it's create the stories they're going to tell, create the memories, and create the connections.
100%. Kind of just in concluding and wrapping up here, as I check time, and we're just about there. We have a few minutes left, but Liz, I think that as a whole, what we're sharing today is really something that can become a format and an actual standard for how you start from the beginning. I know we said that already, but what I'm really interested in next is, okay, let's say I do the full thing from blueprint to measurement, right? How do I get to the next step, right?
Mhm.
So what, in your opinion, is, I mean, I kind of get it, I understand what it might be, but I'd love to hear from you. All right, I followed the blueprint, I know I had a great event, right? I got my metrics back, right? My measurement was done, and I hit an 8.8, right? What's the next step? How do you keep that investment in the people where they feel just as special 6 months from now as they did during the event?
Right. Well, this is where we can get into brand loyalty, but it's again not necessarily the brand that people are connecting with. It's the moments they had with the people around that brand. So you have to continue having those moments. So I think beyond just looking at your one event with your ROE blueprint, look at your entire buyer's journey strategy and how you can keep those emotions going. If you're looking at the awareness phase, this is the perfect place. That discover awareness, that's where you want adventure to draw people in. What are those people doing? I want to be a part of that. That's crazy amazing. And all the way down through the loyalty and advocate phase, this is that sense of belonging, whether it's creating a community, sending them something that they can wear or share. I used to work for a CEO that he would only send gifts that were shareable as an office gift. He would never send one person something they would use. It would be like a whole cheesecake from Katz's Deli so that they would share slices with someone. And I really thought that was
Brilliant.
a unique way of gifting, because it was, like you said earlier, allowing them to give more. And when they're able to give, then they feel a closer connection to you. So creating all of your programs using those feelings of making sure that they feel it along the way.
You guys actually sent me a gift that was probably one of the most ingenious pandemic time gifts I've ever gotten, and that was the indoor s'mores kit.
That was
Right?
awesome, right?
That was amazing. I couldn't believe when I opened it up. I'm like, wait a second, it's got everything I need. I'm like, how am I going to make a s'more? And then and there's a fire in there, the indoor fire that I could. I'm like, they thought of everything, and what did I do with it? I went and made them with my daughters, right?
Right.
And had a great time and had a memory, right? And it wasn't like there was some big message in there. It just said hot on. I knew who it was. I immediately thought of you guys, and it was simple. And so swag obviously is not dead, right? I mean, like everybody keeps talking. Yeah.
And it's like you
That's
said, with virtual, people are talking about Zoom fatigue
Right.
and screen fatigue. And what was our famous saying at Flashpoint?
You got to tell me. There was so many. Don't put me on the spot like that, Liz.
There's no such thing as screen
Yes.
fatigue. Your
There is.
event
Yeah,
just
that's true.
suck.
That was one of the right. That was when I came out of that one session. I actually think I used some different vernacular than that.
You did.
Yeah. But you're right. There is no such thing as
Same thing with
screen
swag.
fatigue.
There's no such thing as bad gifts. There's just bad gifts, right? You
Right.
just have to think it through and have those experiences. So the unboxing that you had with the s'mores kit was like, what is going on here? What is this? You open it up and it's like, oh, I see. It's little stick things and it's got all of the stuff. Well, okay, now I got to go create a fire. Oh, wait, there's a fire in there. So it's like, as you kind of keep unfolding it and feeling all the emotions, and it's all about conversation around a bonfire, right?
Right. So, but like, not to get off topic and get into a swag conversation, but you made me think of something that I always find very interesting. All right, am I going to send a lot of people a pen, okay, or am I going to send a few people something that really makes them think about me, right? Like if I have a budget, what would I rather do? Would I rather go and send 1,000 pens out randomly to people, or give away 1,000 pens out of a trade show booth, or would I like to have a limited supply of people that I target certain customers and send them something that's incredibly unique to them, right? And that makes them think like the s'mores kit. That was something that I'll never forget, right? So yeah, you guys are doing so many things right. It just makes me smile, and it gets me excited because it sharpens me, right? It gets me thinking about in my business. We're on complementing sides of a business segment, right? I'm a supplier to you, right? That happens. I should say that, I guess, for full transparency, right? Like that's kind of the hierarchy here. But what I've started to look at, and what I think ROE makes me even more effective at, is what I consider bi-directional partnerships, right? I don't think that the days of it being a hierarchy of one direction. We all have relationships in a lot of different directions. Your AV provider can bring you business just as much as your agency can bring it to an AV provider, and that's really where I think our growth as an industry starts to take off.
But it's about bringing heart. So and I know we did one project together that was one of those, like, low budget. We wanted to bring in from the outside and not use the in-house. We had all of these constraints to do, but even working together through knowing that this is important for the people that are putting this event on, that it doesn't look like all those things I just said. And you're able to understand what we're trying to accomplish, to think through. This is before ROE was a thing and we knew what it was, but you intuitively know, if we have this personal relationship and talk through what we're really trying to accomplish, you can create an environment that is going to, even if it's just staging that we're talking about, this staging environment is going to drive the connection that we need. And so I love that you intuitively knew it, and now we can blueprint it and measure it and do it even better in the future.
Right. Yeah. I mean, whoever your partners are, right? You take that blueprint into the process in pre-production, and everybody can say, all right, am I hitting the marks?
Yeah.
Right. So it's incredible. with that, Liz, I am going to wrap things up. I can't thank you enough for joining me today. It was, anytime I get to talk to you is a special day. So thank you for that.
Always fun. Thank you so much for inviting me on. And I hope it was helpful for folks. And I like to say, it's like cold fusion, right? It should be free for everyone. So everyone should take ROE and go use it, and let's make everything better.
Agreed. And so my next step after this is I'm calling out Brian Kramer now, because him and I have been talking about doing one of these connects together. And I think that's a perfect next segment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is him looking at what we talked at today, and bringing his perspective into the conversation. I would love to hear everything he has to say. So check it out when we start sending out the emails and the posts on LinkedIn. Liz, thank you again so much.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone else, Joy, Michael, John, Dana. Thank you all for joining. We'll see you soon.
See you soon, everybody. Take care.